Welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Vet Podcast. I'm Andrew Duffer. Today we're talking with Zach Skow, founder of the Positive Change Prison Dog Program. Today we're going to walk through how the program started, how the dogs and trainers get selected for the program, and how it's helping dogs get adopted while also creating future trainers and behavioralists along the way. So let's get into it. Had two mountain men that love dogs on today.
Yeah, I'm a converted mountain man, right? Like I'm from the beach.
Yeah.
So I have
Okay.
definitely adjusted my life accordingly.
You like the mountains?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad. It's it's a lot different now that I have kids. And obviously that I'm sober. So
That's great.
You getting sober, you credit to a dog named Marley. Is that what that is? Marley's Mutts.
yeah. I was telling Andy I love that we both got big old pitties in the background.
Well, yeah, a lot of people don't like pitties, and I'm not on the fence. I believe in vicious dog laws, but not breed bans. And I will admit that pits are overrepresented in bad bites and things, but they're also overrepresented in the shelters. And the thing is, you can't ban stupidity of humans, and that's the problem. The dog problems are human problems most of the time.
Yeah.
I'd say 90% of the time. And unfortunately, you can't ban stupid people, although I'd like to save a lot more dogs that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's got to be a balance there, and there's got to be people have to be held responsible. So
Cool.
I'm kind of impressed with your prison program, because I know there's one in Montana that I think that does cats, and I know that down in Canyon City they have a program involving dogs. I'm not I'm
Yeah.
not involved with. But they seem to be pretty popular right now, and I think there's a real benefit to the human side and the animal side from that standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of prison programs. Keeping them
Yeah.
upright and supported is a challenge.
I think that's true with a lot of things in animal welfare in general. So.
Yeah.
How did you get started? What's the first step to getting it done at a prison? And
Yeah. Yeah. So opening an animal rescue rehabilitation prison program is quite a challenge, but it was something that I stumbled into. At the time, our organization was quite large, but we didn't have enough fosters to save the number of lives that we wanted, right? And we didn't have a location where we could be kind of cycling dogs in and out. I got to the idea of a prison program, of a way that we could pull the most vulnerable dogs, pitties, shepherds, those kinds of breeds, bring them into the prison system, have them exist in a structured environment where their needs are being met, where they're working on fundamental rehabilitation that will help them get adopted and stay adopted. So what we found pretty early on is that extremely difficult dogs were being wonderfully rehabilitated in prison. That the structure, the having 3 students per dog to work on these dogs every single day for 14 hours a day was extraordinarily beneficial. We could work on really acute rehabilitation when it came to behavior modification. Once we got a few rounds in, it was very obvious that our trainers were becoming experts. We had some of the best trainers in California going in every week to help train our dogs, train our students, and really create the foundation for a productive program. We could have many more dogs fostered, have their needs met, and really get them on a path to getting adopted and staying adopted. We could also, at the same time, create behaviorists and dog trainers, of which we desperately need, who can handle difficult dogs. And so many of our guys started getting out of prison pretty soon thereafter and getting hired within the community. Not only getting hired within the pet industry, but starting their own small businesses, becoming trainers. We've had nearly 30 formerly incarcerated dog trainers get out of prison and find gainful employment in the industry, thus radically helping the rescue community in the greater Los Angeles area.
I'll just say, for over 20 years, I've been preaching that shelters need to have a behaviorist and a trainer on staff, and most of them don't. And you're right. The number one reason animals are euthanized or go into shelters to begin with are behavior problems, because you're killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. And I have to say, a lot of shelters and rescue places are more liberal and are more likely to hire someone with those kind of expertise.
The shelter system is sort of built on second chances, right? So it's very it was very natural for our formerly incarcerated trainers to get out of prison and end up in this field. And year over year, we have a radical deficit in terms of trainers and behaviorists. The public is saying, hey, I need help with my dog. Costs are going through the roof because of supply and demand, and there aren't enough trainers who are qualified. Our guys predominantly learn dog psychology in prison, but they're learning everything. We'll bring in different trainers who will explain different aspects of behavior and dog training, and they're really getting a wide variety of education on the topic, and they're just being wildly successful out there in the streets.
Mhm. Well, no one system works for every dog. That's the reality of life.
Can you walk us through a normal day? Like, what does it look like for a dog and an inmate in the program? Does the dog stay at the prison? How much time do they spend training? Would you touch on that?
Yeah, sure. Essentially, what will happen at the beginning of a program is we'll go in for the first 2 weeks with demonstration dogs. And the composition of our class will be some students who have already graduated. Some of these guys have been promoted to lead trainer or to assistant trainer, and some students will be new. After 2 weeks of introduction, which is a variety of different elements related to dog psychology, we're going to bring the dogs in, and then they're going to spend the next 12 months living there. Those dogs are with those
Wow.
guys from the time the cells pops at 5:30 or 6 a.m. Dogs are going to be let out of their airline crates, which are in the housing unit. Dogs will be let out. They'll go potty. Then they'll go to their outdoor kennels after they get their walks and eat. And then all the guys will go to chow from 8:30 to 9:30, 10. And then the dogs are basically within free structured play and training for the rest of the day, essentially until lights out. So for about 14 hours, there are 3 student inmates working on 1 dog each. So if there's 10 dogs, there's 30 students, and they're working on whatever it is they need to work on, whether it's abiding by the curriculum and what we're focusing on specifically, or any of the behavior modification that that particular dog needs to get comfortable with. And then at the end of the program, they give testimonials, they give speeches at graduation. A lot of times their family will come to graduation. It's the best thing. So a lot of our students are, most of our students are loss of life, are longer term sentences. So we're dealing with, mostly I would say loss of life, gang violence that took place in the late 90s or early 2000s. The guys have been locked up ever since. That's kind of our typical charge, if you will. And a lot of these guys wouldn't ever find themselves in the pet industry or working with dogs, but they have found themselves doing so in prison.
Zach, can you tell me real quick how incarcerated people are picked for the program?
Yeah, that's a good question. So incarcerated student trainers are selected for our positive change program based on a variety of different metrics, but it's not too it's very inclusionary. So what we're looking at are, first of all, students who have the availability to put in the time, right? So we're trying to take guys, we're trying to only bring in people who have the ability to put in the amount of effort they need to. We don't allow animal abusers to be in the program. We don't allow anyone with bad paperwork. So in other words, with child charges or certain types of female charges on their paperwork. And that's not necessarily because we don't want to rehabilitate them. It's just to keep the program safer. Um, you know, uh, it would not be necessarily safe for us to have those type of individuals in the program. Having said that, like I said before, most of our students come from a background of gang violence, of loss of life gang violence. So those are sort of our generally speaking the background of our students, but they come from all backgrounds, all colors, and all backgrounds. The only real requirement is that they will dedicate the time to the program. They don't have an animal charge on their record. They don't have a female or children's charge on their record that would cause a problem. And that, again, they're willing to participate full throatedly. So those are really the only requirements.
We know that 75% of the women that go through abusive situations have witnessed animal abuse in the same household. There's a really high correlation there. And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, do you want someone in the program that could potentially, and if you're dealing with a tough dog, it's real easy to, for a young man or a man to lose his cool and overreact,
Yeah,
so
to get
you
frustrated.
definitely have to be
The,
careful
the,
who you,
the really interesting thing is that the environment, the atmosphere that we've created is so supportive of the dogs that things like that aren't
yeah,
tolerated. So within a prison system, these guys
sure.
finally have a life to care for. A lot of these guys have kids that they're unable to care for. So to provide them with an environment where they get to be a dad and they get to provide that structure and that care and that direction, they take it very seriously. So when or if people are over the top in, say, a correction, which we don't really do corrections in there really at all, but
Right.
if they're doing anything that is too rigid or too aggressive, it will be addressed, usually by the lead or co-lead trainers. And then if it comes to us, we'll address it later. But that's happened very rarely.
I think that'd be one advantage of having 3 people together because you kinda keep the other people in check, you know?
Yep. Yep.
I would think that'd be
And guys
beneficial.
have the reason we have 3 students per dog is that prison can be busy, and we're trying to pull these guys off the gang politicking line and into the prison programming line, in
Sure.
which case they're gonna have sometimes church, they're gonna have class, they're gonna have meetings with their lawyers, so it's important for us to make sure that that dog has somebody with them at all times.
I see.
Yeah.
How long does the dog usually stay in the program before it's ready to be adopted?
The dogs typically stay in prison for 3 months, but, sometimes we'll have a foster program keeping them there until they're adopted. So in other words, we'll usually have an off period for 3 weeks to a month in between programs. So that dog will just stay there, benefiting from the structure, routine, and discipline of the environment. We've also hosted other prison programs, which are kind of like placeholders, where essentially that's all they're doing is they're fostering these dogs in a structured manner, but not necessarily moving forward on a full positive change cohort where we're doing homework and all the rest of it. So we have a couple different varieties of programs that we've presented.
This model helps shelters stretch their limited resources further because the dog is completely out of the shelter.
Yeah, and again, we're going after the most euthanized dogs. So we're going after young, large dogs, pitties, shepherds, huskies.
Sure.
We're going to pull that dog. We're going to bring him to the ranch or to a foster home for a period of 1 week to 2 weeks. They're going to go through quarantine, make sure they're not sick, make sure we're not missing any behavioral issues that might cause a problem in prison. Then they're going in. They're going to spend 3 months there. They're going to work on their curriculum. Then they're going to graduate and they're either going to get adopted straight out of prison to their home or they're going to stick around in prison in a structured environment for a little while until
Gotcha.
they
Oh,
get
okay.
adopted. And then we're going to start the program back over again.
It's
Okay. Has it ever happened where an inmate's time is up and they get out and they get to adopt the dog?
Many times. Yeah.
That's
Not
cool.
it doesn't
I would
usually
think so.
coordinate. It doesn't the timing doesn't usually work out like that where the student is getting out at the same time the dog graduates. Usually what happens is the dog will get out, gets adopted by the family or some kind of a family member, significant other of that student, and then when that student gets out, they get
Okay.
reunited. That's happened over probably a dozen times, if not more.
That's
That's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah, that's really
I like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing another program now. It's the 12-step
Oh, yeah, yeah.
program.
Yeah, yeah. So the program that I've designed recently, I created the new program with one idea in mind, and that is how can I be most effective to these students and to these dogs? How can we really get them on a path of success and a trajectory of hope and opportunity? And the best way to do that is to provide sobriety. Sobriety is all but non-existent within the prison system. It's very difficult to attain, very difficult to visit to have meetings. So our program is going to pull these guys in off the politicking line, get them focused on the 12 steps of recovery and the 12 steps of dog training. So every week we're going to be going over a step of training and a step of recovery, working on those symbiotically. And then at the end, these men will have worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. They will have gone through the 12 steps of recovery and then really become more balanced, more capable individuals with some tools on how to deal with life. And then from that point, we usually see guys enroll in all kinds of different programs within the prison, whether it's OMCP or Defy or programs that ARC has. There's a lot that can be offered to these guys, but we got to get them out of the politics and into the programs. So that's what I'm focusing on.
Well, to show my ignorance, they don't have access to a lot of drugs and alcohol in prison, but they're not rehabilitating themselves per se either.
No, 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 no. They have more access to drugs and alcohol in prison than you do on the streets. It is utterly
What you
ubiquitous.
just
There
said.
are more drugs in prison than you could ever
Okay.
imagine. And we're dealing
Okay.
with odd
How?
we're dealing we're dealing with difficult
Hmm.
drugs in prison. We're dealing with spice, which can be sprayed onto paper and such. Same with methamphetamine, fentanyl. So it's everywhere. And the for those guys that are on spice, it's a really it's a energetically terrible drug. They're having kind of like psychotic breaks, and then these guys are visible on the yard, and it's a really the drugs are absolutely everywhere. But there isn't really a great way to get them focused on recovery.
Right. That's insane.
Yeah, we were having overdoses during COVID like you wouldn't believe. I mean, there was like weekly overdoses.
Huh. I mean, you see those kind of things on TV, and I think, oh, it can't be that real. It can't be that bad. But it sounds like it's worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, all you need is fruit to make Pruno, and to ferment alcohol. And again, there's all, I mean, I don't know all the methods and strategies for how these things are brought into
Sure.
prisons, but I just know they're everywhere, you know?
So you have someone that goes to shelters and seeks out specific types of dogs? Or is there, like, specific
Yeah.
shelters
Yeah.
that
So
you
we go,
work with?
yeah, we go to the shelter all the time. So when we're running positive change, we'll go in and do behavior assessments. Sometimes they'll send us dogs that have the least time left. So we'll go do some assessments and pull for the program. Some programs have students that are really, really dialed in and capable of really challenging cases. So we'll send in some more difficult kids, whereas other programs are younger. So we won't send in as difficult to dogs. But all of these dogs come from essentially the euthanasia list.
Okay.
You're hitting, like, all the marks. You're taking out, like, like 3,
And
4
yeah,
birds with one stone.
Like for all those of us that have been
yeah,
involved in
yeah.
this fucking crazy economy, the pet industry and the all of the things that come with it, like uh well, first of all, if you're at all a highly sensitive person, what a demonic, crazy cycle of death that we have as the like the core
Yes.
principle of our sheltering system. You know, we got
Yeah.
like
Yep.
that's the core mechanism of our sheltering system is we're going to bring in all of the unwanted dogs into this terribly dark, dank, unproductive, awful, low frequency environment. We're going to make people who absolutely care and love these animals, care for them the
Yep.
second they walk in the door, provide everything they need. And then those same individuals are going to have to not move them somewhere, not
Kill
send them,
them.
but put them to
Yeah.
death. Physically inject
Yeah.
them with
Kill them.
sedative and euthanol and carry out this
Yeah.
really dark cycle of death. And then we're going to have the audacity to make it simple for ourselves and just blame the staff. That's going to be what we come up with
Yep.
as the solution to this problem. And then we're going to create a tidal wave of negativity for these individuals. So therefore, we're never going to attract the good people we need working at shelters because after all, who wants to work at a shelter when you're all but guaranteed to have to put dogs to death on a daily
You're,
basis and
yeah.
get railroaded by the society that you're having to clean up for?
It's
Crazy.
really frustrating.
And that's
Yeah.
why I say go back to the root of the problem. And we've been talking about this on other podcasts, but and that's one my big complaint with the no kill is that in the end, I understand no kill and I understand the goal, but at the same time, by not accepting animals in shelters and leaving them on the street, we just call it slow kill. They die anyway, and they have all these other problems. We're not addressing the underlying problem, and that is
Yeah.
being able to the people who are lower income be able to help them with their animals and provide low cost spay and neuter to drop the
Totally.
population, so
Totally.
the shelters aren't overburdened. It's not
Yeah.
rocket science. It's
I would love
simple,
to get
and we
into. I just had one last thing I wanted to touch on regarding positive change. One of the reasons we have so much euthanasia in this country is because we don't understand the needs of a dog. We still have this idea that we can just adopt a puppy and we're just going to love it. If we just love it, it will perform the way we need to and we'll have this wonderful symbiotic relationship. The reality is every dog is an individual, every dog is unique, and just like
yes,
children, they have to be enriched and there has to be, like Caesar talks about, rules, boundaries, discipline, exercise, affection. All of these things
yes,
are critically important to the structure of a dog's life. So as a culture, as a society, we have to start to understand that if I'm going to bring a dog into my life, I have to prioritize the following: structure, exercise, rules, boundaries, all of these things that will create a productive relationship, a productive human animal bond. A productive human animal bond doesn't just magically manifest because you love a dog. You have to take a pragmatic approach to providing structure that will give this dog a positive outcome. And we're losing sight of that completely. And we're just saying
absolutely.
ridiculous monikers like there's no bad dogs, just bad people. And it's not as simple as that. It's not that there's
No,
bad dogs or bad people. There's uninformed people and uneducated dogs. And if we educate our dogs and we inform our people, then we'll be able to start working our way out of that problem. But we don't, our culture doesn't prioritize the primary needs of a dog so that they will have a successful adoption.
no.
You
People
know?
get dogs based on their appearance. That's their
A
focus.
lot.
Oh,
Well,
that
that's
too.
why I say I have the spear. It's the tip of the spear, low cost spay neuter. You have humane education, which we're way behind on it. And once again, you have all these groups sitting on millions, but we're doing very little to educate the public. And then you have to have good animal control ordinances, laws, so people can't abuse animals or willy-nilly be breeding them in their backyard, things like that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like I say, it's not rocket science, it's common
Yeah.
sense, and it pays for itself in the long run. It pays for itself
Yeah.
in emotion, it pays for
Yeah.
itself in the death of the animals that shouldn't occur, and it pays
Yeah.
for itself in just so many ways to society, less bites, less, car accidents, you name it, So
Yeah.
I don't understand why we don't put the money there. I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing we ought to all be discouraged about is any bureaucracy's ability to address this properly, right? Like take a look at homelessness, right? We spent $80 billion in the last couple of years on homelessness in California, and we've only darn near made it worse. So I trust no bureaucracy within California to
Yeah.
address this properly. Like I've been involved in this for 20 plus years, and I'm so tired of being pessimistic. I'm so tired of being jaded on solutions, just kind of like knowing that they're not going to be
Yeah.
productive. Man, if we're not talking about massive resources and a fundamental change in how we go about spay and neuter, then this is all moot, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And the sad part, we were there, I mean, from 1990 to what, 2010 or so, we dropped euthanasia rates, or, I guess it goes back further than that. But when we were killing 26 to 24 million a year, and now we're
The
down, depending
70s?
on who you want to believe, 4 to 6 million. I mean, we're not killing 20 million for sure that we were killing before. But the point is, we shouldn't have to kill any, or
Yeah.
very few. I mean, there's reasons you do euthanize some animals. I understand that. But once again, if you can give them good programs, not just adopt out a dog that's going to bite or have the propensity to bite, if you actually train the dog. But to train a dog, we trained one dog through our facility up here. It cost me $12,000. And I, as a nonprofit, I can't afford $12,000
Yeah,
for every third dog that comes through my facility. It's not,
totally.
it put me out of business, So, I mean, there's ways to handle these, but we need more innovation, and we know how. We just are not putting the money there. And when you look at the top 5 groups that are sitting on worth $1.3 billion, I think they took in 2022 or 2023. I mean, that's enough money to do a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah,
Give
absolutely.
me some of
I
that
mean, we
money.
need
I'll
to
do something with it.
I would love to know your thoughts, Jeff, on how we can subsidize or encourage our communities, especially these communities in California and Texas and elsewhere where there's real problems, on how to get more veterinarians into the field.
Well, I think the vet profession has state boards are doing everything to slow that whole process down, and quite frankly, they make it. California has some ridiculous rules, out there that just it makes it more expensive to do things. So even when you're trying to do low cost stuff, boards are going to make it more and more expensive for you to do those things, and it's something they have this idea that that we need to be operating on a Cadillac plane or a Mercedes-Benz plane when a Volkswagen
Yeah,
plane works just as good,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's
exactly.
no one answer. I think given incentives, kind of like the Peace Corps, if there are incentives now for veterinarians, and I don't know if they took it away or not. There were where because they come out in so much debt, if they go to work for a nonprofit, they can work off some of their debt. And I think
Uh,
those are the kind of programs that really help. Because
yeah,
and there's no question, nonprofits. I get calls almost weekly from nonprofits saying, "Do you have a vet? Do I need a spay neuter
mhm,
vet?" And they're paying really decent money. Now you
yeah,
don't graduate and you're a good spay neuter vet. I mean, you got to be able to make it profitable for most of those groups. You need to be able to do like 30 animals in a day, and
yeah,
a new grad can do about 3 in a day. So it takes a while to get there. But there are opportunities, and I think things. I want to just say from a feel good perspective, I'm an optimistic, and from the standpoint, I see a real change in the students that have come through our training program that they don't want to work for corporate and they're looking for options. Now, if nonprofits can step up and give them a reasonable sum of money to do the
yeah,
same work, I think they'll jump on it. I really do.
yeah. And we
It's just
can,
tough
but we
for
rely on.
nonprofits to be able to hire folks.
Yeah, you're totally right.
But
But we rely on government agencies to a large degree to provide some of that funding. A lot of those larger grants are either going to come from those big three or going to come from your local
yeah,
county, supervisors or
yeah,
sometimes your city councilor's office. So, and you know how it is. Funding for spay and neuter like ebbs and flows radically. They'll have these big
yeah,
perturbations
absolutely.
of which is ludicrous because then you can't really execute strategy properly because it's the funding is isn't there.
No, and it really, in bad areas where there's not a lot of vets, it takes 3 to 5 years to see a significant difference. And then what's happened so many times I've seen is like you kind of beat everything down and you get to a spot where things are starting to look really good, and the government says, "Well, everything's looking so good, we don't have to fund it next year."
Yeah, exactly.
And then 2 years later, you're right back where you were 20 years ago. It's like because dogs once again breed 15 times faster and cats 45 times faster than humans, and it doesn't take them very long to catch up and pass us. That's the reality of life. Jack, you there?
We lost him.
They're going to be starting that machine up behind me here real quick.
Okay, well, I mean, if you want to get going, then I'll
Okay.
just text him. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. We post new episodes every Monday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 12 p.m. Central, so we'll catch you back here next week. We'll see you next time.